This special release podcast episode was originally recorded during the 2022 Beyond Clean Expert Series Conference, the industry's only 100% PowerPoint-free educational event. If you prefer to watch this interview, you can access it and over 200 other CE programs by visiting beyondclean.net. Thanks for listening and keep fighting dirty.
Welcome back, everybody, to our final session of today's Expert Series Conference. I am Melanie Perry, perioperative clinical manager for Beyond Clean and also one of the co-hosts of the First Case podcast. And today we really do want to just extend a huge thank you to Power Supply and the First Case brand for partnering with Beyond Clean to collaborate with us and to bring us this exciting conference today. It has been a fantastic day of learning and discussions. Today, for this last session, we are going to have Jonathan Wilder. He is a managing director of Quality Processing Resource Group and a Beyond Clean water quality expert. Dr. Wilder is passionate about equipping sterile processing departments with the tools to tackle wet load and instrument staining issues, as well as tools for preparing accreditation audits. And also joining us for this last session is Hank Balch. He is the founder and president of Beyond Clean. And Hank is a well-known industry writer and social media connoisseur on a mission to equip sterile processing professionals with the skills and knowledge to fight dirty every instrument, every time. Our presentation today is Under Pressure, Going Beyond Water Myths in Device Reprocessing. Have you ever had a wet pack in your steam sterilizer? Have you ever had a surgeon question a water spot or a discoloration on a surgical instrument? This discussion is going to identify current industry water quality guidelines departments should know and should be following. It will also discuss current debates and disagreements related to water quality. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Wilder and Hank Balch to the stage.
All right, so the man of the hour for this session is John Wilder. John, thank you so much for joining us on this session of the Expert Series Conference.
Thank you, Hank.
Now, John, this is not your first rodeo at the conference or in the round of Expert Series, so you've had a couple of years here to educate the space, and I know long before you did anything related to the Beyond Clean Expert Series, you're out there investing in and educating in the sterile processing industry. Can you talk just a little bit about who you are and how you got involved and have been involved in this space?
Sure, thanks for that. First of all, it is an honor and a pleasure to be here. I do like to try to raise the game of everyone involved if I can, and Hank has been nice enough to believe that I can do that, so thank you for that. Mm-hmm. I started in the industry in the very end of 1990, so the gray hair is real. I didn't dye it to look, more.
90 is just 10 years ago, right? It's not that long
something
ago.
Like that. Something like that, yeah. Anyway, I, much to my surprise, wound up as staff R&D scientist for the predecessor of Getting in the United States, MBT Corporation. Started working on all sorts of interesting projects there, one of which that kind of leads to where this goes was 510K FDA clearance for a high-level disinfecting washer. And I wasn't that close to the real world until like 2005 or so, when we were my retired partner Charlie Hancock said, "I'm tired of doing this steam quality stuff and getting too old. You do it." But since it was Charlie, for any of you who know him or know of him, it was much nice. It was presented in a much nicer manner. I'm a physical chemist by training. Typically, that means we either build machines or do process analysis, and I've done both. Process analysis here involves basically taking an approach of CSI Sterile Processing. I'm probably going to get sued by whichever network that is, but crime scene investigation. You guys get a stain. You guys get a wet load. You guys get a melted or distorted or burnt load. That's a crime. That's a crime against the patient. That's a crime against the hospital's efficiency. And so I took the tools of physical chemical analysis and I brought them and bring them to bear on the problems like this. Some of it's as easy as making measurements with I call them instant gratification measurements with pH meter, test strips, things like that on the spot. You want it right, you take it to the lab, and I do both depending on the customer's desire and needs. And I'm pleased to say that I have a lot of happy customers, but I work hard for that. It's not. Sometimes it's the same thing over and over again. Sometimes it's something completely different, and the completely different ones are the ones that make it most interesting. For me, make it most difficult for the end users.
And so, John, Dr. Wilder, you're obviously a smart guy, and you could have chosen to do a lot of things. So what about water quality in particular has kept your attention all these years?
Well, I have to thank the engineers, excuse me, and architects that design healthcare facilities for doing it so badly that I get to go in here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, thanks for job security, right, engineers?
Well, let me explain what I mean by that. They do a great job, but they don't take into consideration the needs of sterile processing. I did start a talk on this once with saying you are actually in sterile processing a chemical factory. The chemical you're producing is water. If you look at TIR-34, ABTIR-34, if you look at the upcoming, you can't, but you will be able to look at ST-108 when it publishes. And we had a lot of progress on that this week at the AB meetings.
What is that, by the way, for folks?
These are both water. This is ST-108 turns TIR-34 into a standard, so it will have some teeth. You'll be able to enforce that. It is water for instrument processing, essentially.
Okay, great.
And we also get into steam generation in there, a number of things that we're doing. But there are requirements for the impurity levels in the water. And I'm honored, and I use that word a lot today, but it's true. I'm truly honored to be part of having created some of those, and did a lot of work on the document. And I was the one who kept forgetting not to raise my hand when assignments were passed out on Wednesday at the meeting. So I've got some homework from the meeting. Actually, it was Tuesday. But the point of this is to get water to a state where it's not going to cause trouble for you. Well, if you get city water coming in with no with no controls on it, with no filtration, just even simple filtration to get the rocks out of it. And when I say rocks, I mean like little fine grains of sand. You're asking for trouble, and you're going to get it. If you are running water at pH 6, in other words, acidic water, you're going to start corroding iron and stainless steel piping and instruments. If you're running water with high chloride, you're going to start corroding stainless steel. Now, there's a lot of stainless steel in sterile processing, and you don't want to do that. So there are a number of things that need to be done to prepare the water for use in sterile processing. And in my version of an ideal world, at least in this particular subject, sterile processing would be sequestered. The water that goes to the rest of the healthcare institution would stop, would go through a treatment facility, and then come to sterile processing, and I'd be out of a job.
Does anybody do that out there, or is this like the dream?
There are a number of graduates of the School of Very Hard Knocks out there who are doing this. Filtration is not expensive. The consequences are good, but just the first stage of keeping So, for example, I had a client who was in the Northeast. Water mains were put in a long time ago, and one of them broke 3 times in the previous year before I was pulled in to help clean up the mess there. And, of course, when a water main stops, when water stops flowing in a water main and then starts again, you get all this turbulence, and you pick up all this crud off the bottom of the water main. And it went straight to the hospital, which was, by the way, at the bottom of a hill. So, strike 2. As a result of this, they did add what are called sand filters. And sand filtration basically is bags of sand in a housing with appropriately sized inlets and outlets. In other words, the same size as what's going in and out from whatever you have. So if you have a 4-inch water main or a 4-inch pipe, you want a 4-inch inlet and outlet. You don't want to downsize that because then you choke flow, and then the washer disinfectors shut down when somebody flushes a toilet on the 3rd floor, which happened at a different site. But sand filters will take out particulates, will take out general crud. They don't do anything about bacteria. They don't do anything about endotoxins. They don't do anything about chemistry. But they do a good job of getting rid of turbidity, of getting rid of basically stuff suspended in the water. And that's stuff that you don't want on your instruments.
Now, you mentioned earlier that kind of early on in your career, you hadn't quite gotten that hands-on experience in sterile processing. How common is that for the scientists and engineers that are working on developing equipment like washers, for instance, on the manufacturing side, to have never experienced or even walked through an active operating sterile processing department? It's
rare.
Okay, great.
We were starting one of the projects.
It's rare to not be exposed, or it's rare to go in?
It's rare to be exposed.
Okay.
In other words, all the complaints on the Facebook site about instructions for use are true.
Okay.
Not all of them, but a lot of times there's a huge disconnect between the people that create the instruments and create the washers and sterilizers and the people that actually use them. And the FDA has been requesting human factor studies as part of F510K filings, which is great for sterilizers, but washers don't have to have 510Ks unless they're making a high-level disinfection claim, which they are not in general, because why add to your regulatory burden? And, excuse me again, sorry. If the manufacturer wants to win in the marketplace, they will have an advisory board of end users. They will do focus groups. They will go and look and see how these things work. And it won't just be marketing and sales that go to a sterile processing department. It will be actually the people who create these things. And when we were doing my unfortunately never made it to market vapor parasitic acid sterilizer back in the early 90s, we were taken on a tour of an SPD, and we're all standing there like, wow, this is different. This doesn't look anything like our demonstration room back in the...
Wouldn't you know?
So, and it wasn't, it wasn't to name names, it wasn't a Cleveland Clinic, it wasn't a New York Presbyterian, it wasn't an off-site reprocessing center where there was a huge amount of throughput. It was a small local hospital. And even that was like a major eye-opener. So the manufacturers, the good manufacturers, know that these things get used by people who are not the ones who built it. And what I took my Claritin this morning. What a good it did. What may be simple and obvious to an engineer with 20 years of experience in developing sterilizers and washers may not be simple and obvious to the end user. And if it's not simple and obvious to the end user, it's wrong. And that's something that I learned. Because these things are made to be used. They're not made to be admired for their genius of design. The genius of design is in making them usable.
It reminds me, and I've mentioned this on a couple of podcasts and interviews before, but there's this book, I forget the author's name now, but it's called The Design of Everyday Things. And he talks about that the critical importance of designing things that by looking at them, you can tell how to use them. Or the classic example he uses is like a door. You should be able to tell by looking at a door which side you push or pull, if you push or pull. Like how many doors have you ran into and tried to open or tried to push because it's just a poorly designed door. It may be beautiful to your point, and I'm sure whoever designed it is oh yeah, this is wonderful, but
the best thing I ever did, right?
Yeah, and the users are this is a piece of crap. I want to go back, though, to something that you alluded to, and I've asked you this before, but I really appreciate the fact that you're involved in this. I want to highlight it again. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Facebook and all the complaints on Facebook, and I'll tell you, you are one of the very few non-user, you're not a sterile processing tech yourself, but
and you don't want me to be.
But you're on the AMI committees, you're involved in leading the work groups. In that class of people, however many names are on that work group list, I guarantee you that you are one of less than 4 or 5 who are active in communicating and contributing to the conversations that are happening on these Facebook pages and sterile processing. So why do you do that? Why is it important enough for you to go into those groups when everybody else evidently it's either not important to them to weigh in, or there's all kinds of other excuses. Maybe they're too busy. I don't know. But you make time and you're there a ton. So why?
Why not? I mean, not to be flip, but and anyone who knows me knows it's one of my favorite things to be. But why not? It's the processes that happen inside of these silvery boxes that we use to make instruments safe for the next patient are difficult and complex. And some of them, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for what I'm about to say, some of them work on average very well. And what I mean by work on average very well is you look at a washer, and if you look at a washer and you try to measure what a washer is doing, and there are standards for what it has to do, the ISO 15883 series that AMI also has adopted. You'll see temperature requirements, you'll see this, you'll see that, but nowhere is there anything at all about cleaning ability. I'm not saying they don't clean. They do clean, and there are a variety of washers that take a variety of approaches to cleaning. In detail, if you measure 15 points at a washer with a suitably difficult cleaning indicator, and I'm not talking about what you normally buy, but something that, if you're passing... Let me finish that. Let me finish that before I get to the caveat. Okay. I'm going in circles here. But something that's really hard to clean, you're going to see that, in fact, there's a great variation in the cleaning performance throughout the washer itself. If you're measuring with multiple, and I'm going to name names here, TOSIs, Verifies, Wash Checks, whatever, I'm not, and if I left somebody out, I'm sorry. Those are the three majors. And you're passing, you're probably all right. You may not be all right in lumens because you have to test those individually, but let's not go there for now. But if you raise the bar, and I've written about this, and look at it, you're going to see a variety of different results throughout the washer. On average, is it good enough? Probably yes. But the washer processes are, it's not like steam sterilization where it's more or less the same throughout the chamber. It's different inside the chamber in different places. And so if you say on average it's good enough, I'm not saying there are failure points and win points. I'm saying that the average, the bottom of the barrel, in other words, is good enough. And if you get above that, good for you. You know, your patients are that much safer.
And I mean, even in the chamber of the steam sterilizer, like I know that's not the topic of this conversation, right? You know, but even that, as consistent and uniform as it is designed to be, can also have those, you know, cold spots or those like little dropout spots, right? But yeah, that point about the washer, I've never heard you say that before, but so powerful to think about our process of testing and what we think the tests are telling us when we're doing a washer test, and then what it's actually telling us if you look at the complexity of how we load, of the load to load to load, like how that washing mechanism can change, like a million things complex can happen, the chaos inside these washer chambers. And
absolutely,
it's almost impossible in some sense to measure it completely at all times. So then your next question is, what's the best way to capture the most fallout possible? And then if you can't capture it at the test, at the inspection stage, that's your last chance to verify the true cleaning efficacy of your washer.
Well, I'm going to quote somebody I respect very greatly here and think is one of the best things that ever happened to education in our world of sterile processing, and that's Steve Kovacs. And Steve said when we were giving a talk, we were on the same program once, and he says, "Of course I want you to buy Tozy. I work for Healthmark, but if you don't buy Tozy, please test. Always test. The cleaning indicators for washers in general," and I'm on the record here, so I won't give you all the detail of what I was thinking. But in general, most of them are extremely good indicators of getting pretty much everything clean, unless you run into a pathological case. Somebody left cement on the instrument. Somebody let blood and saline dry on the instrument. You know, the point of use treatment failed, or didn't happen, and everything got dry, and so on. And given normal circumstances, using a Tozy, a Verify, whatever, you will get a good indication of the washer's ability to get all that stuff off there. And, you know, people call it bioburden, scientists call it soil. I have a much more succinct technical term for it, crud. And you don't want that crud on there when you're done. By the way, the reason I don't like to call it bioburden is it might not be biological in origin. That's why I quietly am agitating to not use that word. But people are going to use it, and that's where we are.
Yeah, changing the vocabulary in our industry is a fun conversation to have at some point, because there have been a number of attempts to change vocabulary, and in different contexts, not just the bioburden piece, you know, but we're even kind of living through a big rebrand with the ISHM to HSPA rebrand, and that's kind of a vocabulary piece all by itself, and so it's been interesting to see that dynamic play out. And I know we're still early, but then you look at like the IUS versus Flash vocabulary, like there's a lot of things like that where we see, hey, people say, stop saying this, start saying this. So yeah, good luck to you on changing.
Just call me Don Quixote. I'm going to tilt at windmills for the rest of my life, and I try to choose the right ones.
There you go. Two follow-ups here. You made an offhand comment about the fact that washer disinfectors, or at least washers, don't require a 510K. Can you talk a little bit more about like what that specifically means and the impact it has, like from on the manufacturing side?
Sure. Unless and until you make a claim for an endoscope or a high-level disinfection as defined by FDA's 2002 guidance document. Now, I obviously don't read it to say that's the 2002, but that's the document in which they really nailed down what. There was a 1993 washer disinfector document. There's a 2002. FDA has been constant on this subject for the last 20 years. And unless and until you make a claim for an endoscope, or a flexible endoscope, or a high-level disinfection, which means kill all bacterial life and some spores, you don't have to file an FDA clearance. However, if you are a manufacturer of a medical device, and washers, disinfectors, even intermediate-level disinfection medical device, washer disinfectors are medical devices, therefore you have to keep all the records. The only thing you don't have to do is jump through the hoop of paying your $3,000 to $50,000 user fee to the FDA and fighting your way through the process of getting a 510K, getting that FDA clearance. And I say clearance, not what's the word everybody uses? I don't like to say it.
Approval.
As one of the lead reviewers once said to me at a naming meeting, the agency doesn't approve of anything. But she's since retired. But yes, approval. But it's what it is clearance to market. Mm-hmm. And if you have a washer disinfector and you don't have good records that prove that the things you're saying about it are like that it will clean this, that, and the other thing, that the software will fail to a safe state, you're going to get hit just as hard by the FDA as if you if you did it for a sterilizer that has a 510K clearance. So the safety margin is similar as far as you as the end user being able to trust that in fact it was tested, it will do what they say it does, as long as utilities and everything are fed to it in the way that it needs to be fed. I'm giving a talk at Amy Exchange in June. I'm going to San Antonio. Yes, Hank, I am going to Texas.
Welcome.
Or maybe I might even go for HSPA. Don't know yet. What I'm going to talk about there is qualification testing by the user. And if I can just get up on that soapbox for a second here, why would I want to do qualification testing when the manufacturers don't? When the manufacturers do it when they install the machine? Well, one, sometimes they don't hand over the records. There are scorched walls at a certain conference room in a certain Mid-Atlantic hospital from when I attacked, to the point where the customer was upset with me, where I attacked the manufacturer for not. Did the question, why are you not giving them the records? It's company confidential. It's their washer. Well, we can't do that. Did they not pay you for the washer? Mm-hmm. No, they paid. Give them the records. We can't do that. You guys really have a lot of problems. I won't say who it was, and I won't say where it was.
What would the reason be? Like, what's confidential about that qualification testing that a manufacturer would be hesitant to give that over?
Only thing I can think is that it didn't pass on every test. So, and they released it to the user anyway, and they were having problems with it. So maybe that's it. But why would you want to do qualification testing? Well, to know what your machine can do when it's new and everything's supposed to be in order. You want to test. In Europe, they talk about type testing, where type testing is done at the factory and then audited by their quality systems auditor. We don't talk about that. We talk it's more or less the same thing. If it works at the factory, it doesn't mean it works where you are. It doesn't have your water supply. It doesn't have your water pressure. It doesn't have your water flow. It doesn't have your water heater. It doesn't have your specific water conditions. It doesn't have it may not have the detergent that you're using. The dose may not have been adjusted to deal with the specific water conditions that you have. I have a client where I called that doesn't narrow it down too much, where she was switching from one manufacturer's detergent to the other. I called the other up and said, the water total dissolved solids and hardness are this value. What do you recommend? 2 ounces per gallon. What do you recommend if she uses RO distilled water for her for every phase of the washer? 2 ounces per gallon. They were not doing her any favors. They were not responding to the conditions at hand. You have to do that. Every installation is unique, and optimal performance.
Ask a follow up on that.
Yeah.
Because that's the case, I know you've tackled that on a number of your Expert Series releases over this last year, and that connection between water quality and chemical type and chemical dilution, just as you were talking about. How do users engage in that conversation if they're not a water scientist like you are, right? Like, how do they have that conversation, still get to the root of the information that they need, like push back against that, 2 ounces per? Is that the talk track, to just kind of ask, like, on both sides, hey, well, what if my water quality is this, what is this, like, and then they should be expecting different numbers back from the manufacturer? Or how do they tell that they're being, sold a bill of goods, I guess?
The best, and I'm not talking about utopia here. The best suppliers of detergents will test your water for you and give you a dosing regimen based upon that testing. I'm talking about the major manufacturers here that provide this, and they do a very good job of it. As opposed to one manufacturer who, as far as I'm concerned, belongs in jail, who would, and this is not anyone most of you have ever heard of, and I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to be sued.
Me neither. So keep it to yourself.
No, but, it's, I'm not selling enough detergent. I'm going to go visit the customer and turn up the dosing when they're not looking.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, well, that dosing piece, I think a lot of users would potentially be shocked by what their auto washers are actually dosed at. Compared to what the IFU says, but then also compared to what they actually need to be effective. And again, this is a topic that you've talked about before, so this is not my novel idea.
No, well, thank you. I mean, but it's important, and if you talk to any of the the top level manufacturers of detergents, and I mean, I don't want to name names, but they're also major manufacturers of washers. There are some detergent manufacturers that are good, that do this well. They will ask you, either say, send us a water sample. Here's, take a urine specimen cup, fill it up, seal it, send it to us. We'll take care of it. Or they'll do it themselves. The salesperson will do the testing there, and they will do it right. And then you will get a customized solution to what you need, because you have whatever in the water. It's really funny that I'm here. I become a water geek, and when I was in graduate school, there was a professor who did theoretical calculations on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 molecules of water interacting for his entire career. We all thought it was the dumbest thing on the planet. Maybe not. I'm not doing that kind of science, but
right.
It was impressive that he, his diligence, but it was like, why don't you try methanol or something? That would be fun too. You have the code. Do it.
I've got a 6-year-old son at home, and just this past week he started in the bathtub. He would get like a dry washcloth and then like lay down real quick on top of the water and then he's got like some little plastic cups that he'll stack on top of the washcloth. Before the water like completely penetrates the washcloth, it'll float. And he thinks that's just the craziest thing in the world. He's like, man, this is awesome. I'm doing science, like he says. He's a scientist. So,
well, 200 years ago, he was right.
Yeah, that gets in your blood early on, to your point about your professor. And I'm certain that we're going to have folks today that are listening in, and even if they don't become a total water nerd like you hopefully part of the takeaway today is going to be, hey, let me ask some more questions and learn some more about all of
Absolutely.
this. The equipment piece, the water, the chemicals, the standards that we've kind of alluded to a little bit. And speaking of the standard piece, I got two follow-ups. I want to ask you about the disinfection. Like we mentioned, like disinfection in light of the 510Ks, but we didn't get into thermal disinfection. So can you please define what that is and how it's different from that high-level disinfection that you were talking about earlier?
Well, the only difference is time. Some of the folks out there are familiar with the concept of the A0. A0 is a mathematical model of thermal disinfection. And some of the European manufacturers allow you to program your disinfection phase based on A0. Some of them are hyper-aggressive and set it to a very high value so that you could almost use the items without sterilizing. But you always have to use them with sterilizing. That's not even a question. Although Wilder's theory of sterile processing is every step along the way from decontam to, or from point of use treatment to decontam to sonics to washer disinfectors to prep and pack and so on, should almost make the next step not necessary. It should be that good on each step along the way. Getting back to your question, so this A0 is based upon 80 degrees C, which in English or American is 176 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you sterilize, if you disinfect for 10 minutes at 80 degrees C / 176 F, you will get an A0 value of 600. It's the number of seconds in the time that you. But of course, it's not a linear relationship by any stretch of the imagination. That's also the same thing at 93 C, which is something like 200 degrees F, top of my head, for 1 minute. So the hotter you are running, the faster you'll get to A0 600 or A0 3000 or A0 6000. What do these three numbers have to do with anything? 600, 3000, 6000. 300 is not in the conversation. 600 is the basis level at which you should be, could feel safe about allowing a technician to touch an instrument after it goes to the washer. So that's like 80 degrees C. I'm going to do it in Celsius because I remember it best that way. 80 degrees C, 10 minutes. 85 degrees C, I think it's about 3.5. 90 degrees C, I think is 1 actually, and 94 is more.
Is there like a standard in most American washers then that you're kind of typically at the 80 or at the 85 or 90, or does it depend?
No.
Okay.
It's going to be at least 80 / 176. People are. And one of the things I do if it's a programmable washer and it's not for A0 600 is I ask for forgiveness after the fact and set it so to where the technicians will be safe, where the sterile processing people will be to a 600 level. And then I tell and by the way, I did this. I can put it back if you want me to, but it's just another 2.5 minutes that you may or may not notice, and everybody wants washers to, wash in about 14 seconds.
Yeah, as quick as or as quick as mechanically possible.
Right, and the problem is, of course, then you're sitting there with, waiting for wet loads to dry after you take them out of the sterilizer. So pick your battles. It's much easier. It's a much better policy to wash properly and to disinfect properly to keep people safe, and then keep the patient safe by getting your steam right, which is another subject that we're not going to talk about today.
Have you seen washers then in the market in the U.S. in use that are not reaching that 80 at all? If they're not even set to do that?
No, they're all
okay.
Anything that looks like a washer disinfector is going to be doing thermal disinfection at 80 degrees, or 176 or above. I've not seen anything come out of a factory where I was going, oh my God, these people are not, are really risking themselves. The only thing that does that, and it's supposed to, is a Pasteur-Matic or something along those lines. And they're supposed to work at a lower temperature, and the disinfection phase is rather long, because it's usually anesthesia tubing or that sort of thing, and that needs to be disinfected as well, especially as it's a terminal step.
Very early on in this conversation, we went into the conversation about the TIRs and the ST, insert the numbers. Can you, for anyone who's new to this conversation, can you just compare and contrast what a TIR is and what a standard document is, just real quick?
There are, actually, Amy has 3 levels now. There's CS, CR, consensus report, which is enough people agreed that this is something that needs to be gotten out to the public, and we think it's right. TIR is a more formal process, but it's still just technical information report. It's what we think is the best situation. We, meaning not me necessarily, but I have to be on the committee for me to be part of it. But we, the committee, the Amy committee, which is, before anybody starts assuming there's some secret cabal in Arlington, Virginia. First of all,
well, there is, but it's not y'all.
Well, there may be, but I don't want to know about that one. The secret cabal could have been found in any of the bars surrounding Amy headquarters over the past 4 days after, and sometimes during the meetings. You never know. But there is no secret cabal, and anyone can be a member. And we're looking for more and more user membership because, as you were talking about, the engineers and scientists going to sterile processing departments, there are people who live there. There are people who know how this works. And the next Dave Jagrossi or Mary Oliveira or Karen Noss or whomever, Mark Duro, or Hank Balch for that matter. Yes, you too could be a member, Hank.
You too. Serve your country and your.
Well, and that's what you're doing. That's the thing. And now that hybrid meetings are reality, you don't have to leave the comfort of your own desk. You don't have to travel. The budgetary considerations are a lot less. But we need more people who are in the trenches doing the work day to day. Fingers on the buttons, hands on the instruments. Because the AB representation there are 3 parts to it. Users, who are the most important people in this equation. I finally figured that out about 15 years ago, and that's when I started working with water and steam. And it's an honor. It truly is an honor. You folks are heroes. You work with the most sophisticated medical devices ever known to man, and you make them safe for use. I don't want to hear a bunch of arms break, sounds of arms snapping as you pat yourselves in the back, in the background. But by God, you guys do great stuff. But you know where the good and the bad is. Manufacturers who make the stuff, and then FDA is intimately involved in this. So there's a three-legged piece that makes this all happen in a manner where nobody's interests can get put ahead of anybody else's. No manufacturer can dominate the situation. But so getting back to your question.
Let me ask you that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to follow up on that piece because I know, like, the Amy conversation has been, really similar, honestly, for the Isham voting. It's like both of them are always saying, hey, we need more engagement. Like, Isham's always like, we need more people to vote. We need your voice heard. Like, the voting levels are kind of sad. Same thing with the Amy groups. Like, this is not a new thing. We've been singing this song for as long as I've been in the industry. We need more users, need more users, need more users. Why do you think so few users to hear the call? Because I think people have heard Dave Dragrossi ask and write and talk multiple times, get involved. Like, why are the frontline users, in your opinion, still saying, nope, I'm not going to do that. I may do something else, but I'm not going to go do that?
I don't know. In particular cases, I do know that up until now there have been budgetary issues because you had to come to Washington or Baltimore when we were there, or Annapolis, the one that was beautiful, but boy, was it terrible for meetings. We were in three different hotels. But you have to come to the meetings. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. That is of the past. Thank you, technology. Microsoft Teams is a powerful tool, and Amy uses it very well. So all you need is a computer, headphones, and time. Time is hard, but it's a lot less time than it used to be because you don't have to get on an airplane or on a train or in a car or whatever. And these folks are busy. Everybody's understaffed, everybody's underpaid, everybody's overworked. It's hard for people to carve out a full day for the. So we're working on the user side because there are manufacturer's document and user documents, and the manufacturer's documents benefit from the presence of users, but the user documents, it's critical for the presence of users. So we're working on, I believe it's TRS. I don't know what it is. It's that we're starting to work on a splinter of ST79 for dentists. Okay. And basically, the original plan was to pull everything that didn't apply to dentistry out of ST79, but given the fact that the training on the dentist side about following the IFUs is limited, and a lot of them don't know and don't do the what's required. Like, a handpiece should be pre-vacuum sterilized. How many of your dentists have pre-vacuum sterilizers?
Yeah,
they got tabletops.
That's Jim Scott's.
Yes, it is.
That's his song. Yeah,
that's right. And he's singing it beautifully, and it's a sweet melody for me. He and I agree on that one 110%. But they don't know, and so having a document that we're, in that case, the FDA, the American Dental Association, AMI, HSPA, all have contributed. Is going to raise the bar of patient care in here, and as somebody who's getting finishing a root canal on Monday, I'm glad for that. I have too many of them. It's like, oh, again, My cousin was retired as a dentist. I said, why do I have all these problems? He says, you have wilder teeth. It's like, oh, great. It's genetic. It's not me. It's genetic. There's nothing I can do. So, but I do brush my teeth.
It's the Cocoa Puffs every morning. That's what pushes you over the edge.
It's been a while on that, but yes. So the point is, getting back to why do users not do it? I don't know, but I think I've covered all the bases. They don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have and then again, they don't have the time. It's a lot easier now. You can just sit in your office, and you can, and you have to have a membership to vote. And I don't mean an individual. I mean you have to have an institutional membership, and those can get expensive. But it's Well, expensive. Expensive as in coming out of my pocket. I have to pay my dues for Quality Processing Resource Group by the end of May. And I think it's $773, but I'm a small company. Steris doesn't pay $773. You put 2 or 3 more zeros after that. That's what Steris pays. Steris sees it, and Gettiga and Belamed and all see this as to have some skin in the game, to make sure that the rules don't change to where they are hampered.
Right.
There is some, it's not perfect. There is some, there are people who dig in their heels and insist that our design must be. But then, if generally you explain to them how their design is already covered, and they're I got, and it's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just that they don't see things in a generic manner. They see things through the lens of what they're doing.
And can we add an important clarifying point here? We in the industry, in sterile processing at least, we call these standards. But what's interesting about these standards is they are all optional for implementation outside of the state of New Jersey, right? I guess, is that the case for most?
I wouldn't say that in front of a lawyer.
Okay. Okay, prove me wrong. Tell me what I'm missing.
Well, let me get back to the to what you asked me before. What are the classes?
Oh yeah.
CR, Consensus Report, TIR, Technical Information Report, which is a compilation of a large group of experts or people who are influenced by this to say this is how we should do this, and that's where the water quality document is, because we weren't ready to do a standard. That's TIR 34, for example, and then STs, standards, and a standard will almost always be adopted by American National Standards Institute, so it'll say ANSI, AMI, ST79. Right. And then unfortunately, somebody put the word guidelines in the title of ST79. You don't see that in my 2 favorite standards, which are the ones that I'm co-chair for, or at least I was until we pretty much hit them out of the park, got done this week, which is ST8 and ST55, which are the hospital steam sterilizers and tabletop steam sterilizers, and ST24 hospital ethylene oxide sterilizers. It did need a revision because some people are using them, and there are 2 manufacturers, and therefore we had to revise it to reflect the current technology. Those don't have the word guideline in the title. Therefore, it's a guideline. We don't have to follow it. Attitude can't apply. And if you were, yes, outside of the state of New Jersey, it's not the law. It's not enforced as much, but a lot of times you want to say to yourself, what would a lawyer say about this? It's an American national standard. It does have the force of law in a court. And you're going to win 1 out of 100 arguments on that if you're trying to get money saying it's an American national standard, it has a force of law in a court. But
the alternative is what, though, is the question. So if you don't follow those recommendations, what are you following and why? And I think that's where most folks say, okay, we'll follow it, because I don't have a good answer to that.
But there's also CMS regulations. There are also Joint Commission, and there's an interesting discussion going on AMI Connect right now, which is one of the things that you get when you join AMI, which you get to post questions and get a variety of answers. So the Joint Commission dinged a facility, and you can look it up if you wanted to see who it is, I don't remember, for extending dry times because they weren't following the IFUs. Well, somebody prior to that had said dry times, I know this is way off the topic of water, but dry times are not critical portions of the sterilization cycle. Dry times exist to get the load dry so that the sterile barrier surrounding the load will not allow anything to get in there after you open the sterilizer.
I saw that quote this past week, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it was. And so, and why do I know this? Because I write the standard. I mean, I didn't write the standard, but, but Joint Commission doesn't understand that. And with all due respect, they do a good job of keeping us all honest, but if they're going to hold you to a situation where you either can follow the IFUs and have a wet load, or have a dry load and not follow the IFUs relative to dry time, what are they? They're putting you literally in the rock and the hard place, and they're putting a clamp on both in the rock and the hard place. Mm-hmm. You can't win that argument. You cannot take care of the patients appropriately. I'm going to write a letter to Joint Commission on that subject, to be honest.
Is Joint Commission not present at these AME meetings?
That's generally true.
Okay. And I don't just mean to call them out. I'm assuming that D&V and these other, similar agencies are not there either.
Well, I don't know who I don't know who's setting policy for them. I don't know who they know, or what the person or people that are coming up with these ideas know. Mm-hmm. And a new auditor is going to be rule bound, because they haven't seen enough. It's the
right.
What is it, the farmer's commercial. We know a few things because we've seen a few things. Once you've seen a few things, he's right. I like J.K. Simmons as an actor as well, but once you've seen a few things, you start to understand where the cracks in the model are. And so, getting back to the point of this, the water, I like, because we're running out of time here. You should be able to. It's very easy for people in the trenches, the end users, the people who are doing the real work, to make cheap and effective measurements of the water for most of the things that are listed in TIR 34, to make sure your water isn't too hard, to make sure your water isn't too alkaline, to make sure your pH is right, to make sure your chloride, that's the one that's not in there, as obviously is. And by the way, the answer is not what it says in there. That's from drinking water standards. The answer is it should be below 80 parts per million. Otherwise, you're going to have too many instruments corroding. It's very easy to get test strips to do this sort of thing, this sort of testing. They're cheap. They're a lot cheaper. They're cheaper than getting an instrument rebuilt or serviced.
Right. Right.
It's really cheap insurance, and if you have a water problem, you're probably working already with one of the major water companies for RO or DI and that sort of thing, and they could help you. And yeah, it's not going to be free, but it's going to cut down the number of times you get. A surgeon throws a corroded instrument across the OR because it looks like crap, and you have to cancel a case.
Or they take a picture of it and they send it to their reporter who, or their friend who's a reporter who actually works at the newspaper across the street. So either way, not a good result. So get those test strips. I know we are at the end of our time, John, but I want to give you the last word here. We didn't even get to your controversial opinions about water quality, so maybe we'll save that for next year. Yeah.
There's so many.
Is there any specific issue that we haven't brought up today that you would encourage folks out of this interview to continue studying or asking questions about, or even maybe like reaching out to you to learn more about, like any issue or two like that you would say, hey, go and pay attention to this question?
Two things. The slam dunk is, if you're not using at least reverse osmosis water for your final rinse into your washers, you're asking for trouble. And then the other is, how do you know if you need? How do you know if you're rinsing adequately? Watch the wash, watch the cycle, watch the final rinse before the thermal disinfection rinse or the thermal disinfection rinse. If you see suds on the window, especially in the thermal disinfection rinse, you're not rinsing enough. And because you don't want to put detergent on instruments into the sterilizer and turn it into brown crud. Because it will caramelize and it will be ugly, and they won't know what it is, and the case will be canceled.
All right. Well, with that, if you've appreciated this conversation with John Wilder, you can check him out every month on the Beyond Clean channels with his Water Quality Expert series. And that is also converted into podcast content and pushed out every month or so as well. So subscribe to the podcast to listen to those, and subscribe to the social media to read them. And if you see them, just like John shows us so well, it is valuable information to share to your friends on social media who maybe didn't see it, but perhaps need to see it, because we all need to see it. We all need, in some sense, to become water quality experts ourselves, or at least not amateurs, because this is too important of a topic to guess at and assume at. So, John, thank you again for your time and everything that you do contributing to this industry.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I'm fortunate enough to be able to make a living doing this, but reminded of what Buddy Hackett said when he got an award. I got to make a living doing things I was going to do anyway. In his case, it was telling jokes. In my case, well, that happens too. But anyway, on that note, thank you guys. It's always a pleasure, Hank, and the Beyond Clean team. And thank you, all of you folks out there who are doing the heroic work. Be well, and stay safe.
Okay, and we'll turn it back over to the host.